Well, let me just say that I was a voracious reader, but I'm not sure I was a very discerning reader. I think a lot of things went over my head. I can remember now reading some things that I clearly had no business reading, and I know I read some things that went way over my head. Erskine Caldwell comes to mind.
You had no business reading Erskine
I
Caldwell.
had no business, but my parents were so deferential to authority, and the authority of this nicely bound book from the public library, hey, they never questioned what I was reading. I don't know, I was a born nebbish. I was a born nerd. When I was from the earliest I can remember, I was the brainiac. I was the smart kid. And I just loved books. I mean, our little world was so close. Like I said, our only social outlet was church. Choir practice Wednesday night, church all day Sunday. Movies were a huge event when I was a little kid. You dressed up for them. And with 6 kids and 2 parents, we didn't go very often. And this stuff didn't exist. ESPN Zone and laser tag and computers. Kids had to make their own world. And I think I early discovered that in books, I could go around the world in 20 days. I could go 20,000 leagues under the sea. I could go on the moors with Heathcliff and Cathy. I could mutiny on the Bounty. I could go to the South Seas. And in books, because our home was so straight-laced and your wants were just not very important. If you were hungry, tired, sleepy, doesn't matter. You're alive and you got a roof over your head. But in books, my emotions mattered. I'd sit there reading with tears streaming down my face or laughing so hard. And that was a place where I didn't have to be decorous and calm and quiet. I could go off in a corner and laugh my head off and read a passage 5 times. So my feelings, and I was free in books. And the more I read, the freer I could be. And as our household became more and more a danger zone, books. In the bathroom, going up and down the steps, I walked out into traffic. I lived my whole life in books.
Do you think there was any downside to the reading of books? I mean, did you, for example, get ideas in your head that as a young person, as an older person, you might reject, as a younger person, you had no background to reject?
I clearly, when I said I wasn't a discerning reader, I read some things that were clearly, I didn't know anything about black literature until I taught myself in my 20s. I didn't know anything about the Harlem Renaissance. I didn't know black people could write books until I stumbled across Maya Angelou's first memoir when I was in my late teens. So I didn't say, man, I wish I could read about black people, but I definitely understood that I could read these books, but I couldn't really exist in. They weren't for me. I was allowed to watch them, but I could never imagine myself as Cathy. You know, I could never imagine myself as Madame Bovary. I could never be, that was for white people. And there was clearly, I would read things that were insulting and derogatory, Sambo. I read a lot of fables and fairy tales and stuff like that. But I don't think on a conscious level, I said, wow, that was really insulting. No, that never happened. But I think I stored these things away. And it fed into in the book I talk a lot about my years of self-hatred and, and hating other black people and being afraid of them.
And that was partly because you lived in 2 different worlds. You lived in a white world too for a while, so explain that briefly if you will.
Well, I in the 1967 or so, as a direct result of the Civil Rights Movement, I was in the very early integration class of the gifted elementary program in North St. Louis. St. Louis was firmly racially segregated when I was a kid. North side black, south side white, working whites, suburbs, white people with money. And to get into this program was this incredible thing. My parents debated about it forever, but I really wanted to go, not because I wanted to strike a blow for racial freedom or for women, but I just wanted more school. I wanted better school. My neighborhood school had stopped being challenging. And everybody hated me because I had no social skills. I was always correcting people and arguing with the teachers and that sort of stuff. And I was a really good girl. I was the hall monitor. I was the teacher's pet. I didn't know how to sort of go along to get along. If I knew the answer, like, oh, you're wrong, it's 2 + 2,
And at the white school, they were teaching you things that made you devalue.
Absolutely. You'd go home. The one example I always remember is cup and table, as opposed to cup and saucer. And instead of being mad that people's futures get decided on these tests on the basis, oh, he's stupid, he doesn't know, it's cup. Nobody used cup and saucer. A saucer would be something to eat off in my house. You don't put a cup on but I knew from my reading, and it set me apart from people in the neighborhood, and I would think them stupid for getting that wrong on the test.
Your description of what that young kid, that little boy said, and you wrote it in dialect, but who the hell be using a cup and saucer around here? I mean,
nobody.
it really said it all. It
Yeah.
really said it all.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.